the Universal Declaration is not just a sort of symbol. It's not just a flame that people recognise and pay homage to. It's what I would call a sort of, it's a benchmark, really, for the way human beings should relate to each other. And it's a benchmark which has radical connotations. And I think those radical connotations are a good thing, not a bad thing. Sometimes they're challenging to our own country and challenging to our own government. And that's probably a good thing as well, because it's important that we recognise that the campaign for equal rights doesn't stop. It carries on.
Powerful words from the Foreign Secretary in March, and indeed the spotlight remained on human rights issues throughout the year. The FCO annual report on the subject ran to some 200 pages, covering countries of concern, from Afghanistan and Burma through to Vietnam and Zimbabwe.
I think that the consciousness of the world was changed by the events of 11th September 2001, by the subsequent terrorist attacks, including here in London on the 7th of July 2005, and in Asia and in the Middle East, where there have been terrorist attacks too. The threat we face is different in its methods, in its ideology, and in its goals. It's different than anything we have faced before. Now, some people say that countering terrorism is so important that we must put aside concerns about human rights. I actually think human rights and a concern for them are one of our greatest strengths in the battle to counter terrorism. Democratic and inclusive political systems around the world, first, are a bulwark against the terrorist mantra of incompatible civilizations. That's why we're right, in my view, to support the spread of democracy in Afghanistan, in Bangladesh, in Iraq, and defend fragile democracies in Lebanon, in Pakistan, and in Sierra Leone.
It is estimated that almost 2.5 million people worldwide are victims of human trafficking, many more children and women caught up in slavery and working in appalling conditions.
As human rights moves from the margins to the mainstream, I don't think it can be seen as a discrete part of policy parked at the back of a Foreign Office annual report or even parked in a side of the Foreign Office. It needs more and more to be seen as at the heart of the major challenges of foreign policy. And I think if you look at the new strategic framework that the Foreign Office has published, all the 4 key foreign policy goals that we have set, tackling terrorism, reducing conflict, promoting low-carbon development, and building up strong international institutions, all 4 of those foreign policy priorities reflect concerns about human rights, reflect the role of human rights as a platform for progress, reflect the history of struggle for human rights and what we have learnt along the way, and reflect something else, namely that the case for human rights is a moral one, but it's also an instrumental one.
In May, the then UK Europe Minister Mr Jim Murphy chaired a meeting to consider how the European Union could help on human rights issues.
This relationship between economic stability and dynamism and universality of human rights is an essential component of membership of the European Union as we do continue to enlarging into the Balkans, enlarging in Turkey, and perhaps more widely.
Closer to home, forced marriages and honour-based violence within the UK and abroad remain subjects of continuing concern.
As with the other forms of domestic violence, forced marriage and honour-based violence crosses all social barriers. They are, I think, 2 of the most heinous practices that can take place in our society. And what we as a government has said is they will quite simply not be tolerated.
This year was the 60th anniversary of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, and the work, said the Foreign Secretary, had to continue.
I'm incredibly proud that this should be a country that doesn't just launch great declarations and doesn't just launch campaigns, it actually follows through them. And when I talk about Britain as a global hub for campaigning and for ideas, the field of human rights is one where I think we can justly claim to be playing a global role, above all through the voluntary organisations, the campaigning bodies that do so much to further the cause of human rights around the world.
That UN declaration sets out the fundamental human rights to which everyone around the world is entitled, regardless of age, gender, race or religion. It is something Britain remains completely committed to. The FCO work on human rights will continue across both regional, national and international frontiers.